The internet shrugs off hundreds of cable cuts every year, but there are places it can't afford to lose. In late April 2026, the internet to a small group of Taiwanese islands called Matsu went down. A ship had dragged something across the seabed and cut the cables connecting them to the world. It wasn't the first time. Matsu's cables have been severed more than 20 times in 5 years. And the reaction was the one we've learned to have. Sabotage. Russia or China, reaching under the water to switch a place off. The same fear that followed the cuts in the Baltic Sea and in the Red Sea before that are the sense that the internet is one bad day away from going dark. That fear is understandable. It's also pointed at the wrong thing, because to see what's actually fragile about the system that runs the modern world, you have to stop looking at the cut and start looking at the map. Almost everything you think of as the cloud is, in fact, the ocean floor. Spanning the seabed between continents are fiber optic cables, bundles of glass threads, the whole thing about as thick as a garden hose, carrying data as pulses of light. There are more than 600 of them, over 1.5 million kilometers of cable in all. And they carry roughly 99% of all the data that moves between continents. Not most, nearly all. The satellites everyone imagines? They handle a rounding error, a fraction of 1% of international capacity. This isn't new either. We've run lines under the sea since the telegraph cables of the 1850s. The glass replaced the copper, the principle never changed. The fastest, cheapest way to move information between two landmasses has always been a cable on the bottom of the ocean. So the most important infrastructure of the digital age isn't in orbit, and it isn't in a data center, it's underwater. And it's surprisingly easy to reach. Here's the part that should reassure you. And it's true. Cables break constantly. Every year there are around 200 faults. Most aren't sabotage at all. They're fishing trawlers and ship anchors snagging a line nobody can see. And you never hear about almost any of it. Why? Because the network is a mesh. With 600 plus cables crisscrossing the planet, when one path fails, the data simply takes another. Traffic reroutes in seconds. The break gets quietly patched weeks later by a repair ship, and the world never notices. That's the real reason the internet didn't go dark when cables were cut in the Red Sea, or the Baltic, or off Taiwan's main coast. The system was designed by accident over a century to survive losing pieces of itself. So if it's this resilient, where's the problem? That's exactly the argument worth taking seriously. The case that the panic is overblown is a strong one, and it deserves a fair hearing. It goes like this. The system is robust by design. 200 cuts a year and the internet stays up. That's not luck. That's redundancy doing its job. Most damage is accidental. Operators keep laying new cables and new routes, so the mesh only gets denser. A single cut taking civilization offline is a myth. On this account, cable security is an engineering problem we're managing, not a crisis. All of that is true. And all of it is averages because resilience isn't spread evenly across the map. It's thin exactly where the cables crowd together. Take Egypt. More than 90% of all data between Europe and Asia funnels through that one country, in and out of the Red Sea. Around 17% of the entire world's internet traffic passes through Egyptian soil. And it leaves through the Bab-el-Mandeb Strait, a gap that narrows to about 26 kilometers. In 2024, anchors in that corridor cut cables carrying something like a quarter of Asia to Europe traffic at once. The mesh reroutes around a cut. It cannot reroute around a choke point. So the dramatic story, one cut, the world goes dark, gets the danger exactly backwards. And being wrong about it is what leaves us exposed, because the cut is the thing you can see, and the real fragility is the thing you can't. Look at what the cut distracts from. First, geography. The cable map has the same pinch points as the oil map. Egypt, the Red Sea, the same narrow waters this channel keeps coming back to. Redundancy is meaningless when 100 cables share one corridor. Second, repair. The whole system's recovery rests on a global fleet of roughly 60 cable ships. And that fleet is old, with no one rushing to replace it. The industry's own estimate is that fixing this runs to about $3 billion over 15 years. The internet self-heals only as fast as a handful of aging boats can sail. And third, blame. A dragged anchor and a deliberate cut look identical on the seabed, which makes severing a cable the perfect gray zone act. You can do it, and no one can ever prove it was you. And quietly, the ownership of all of this has moved. A decade ago, telecoms shared these cables. Today, a few American tech giants, Google, Meta, and the rest, own or control the overwhelming majority of the busiest routes. The internet feels like the air. It's actually a few hundred fragile strings, running through a few narrow gates mended by a fleet that's running out, held by a handful of companies. Two futures are being built at once. In one, the system hardens. The same tech giants now pour billions into new cables, including routes deliberately drawn to avoid the Red Sea and spread the load. More paths, more diversity, a mesh that's harder to pinch. The choke points loosen. In the other, the gray zone wins. Cutting cables becomes a normal move in every standoff. Cheap, deniable, consequence-free, while the repair fleet falls further behind the damage. The cuts don't take the internet down. They just become a permanent, low-grade tax on a system that can never quite catch up on repairs. The likeliest outcome is both at once. More cable than ever, laid faster than ever, and still concentrated through the same handful of gates that were the weak point all along. Go back to Matsu. A ship, an anchor, a few islands knocked offline. And an investigation that, like almost all of them, will probably never prove a thing. It's tempting to read that as a story about Taiwan or about one more provocation. It isn't really, it's a demonstration. It shows that the nervous system of the entire planet sits on the seabed, within reach of anything with an anchor, and that you can reach down and pull on it without ever leaving your fingerprints. That's the truth the panic about a darkened internet keeps missing. The danger was never one spectacular cut. It's that we ran the whole world through a few hundred strings and a few narrow gates, left them lightly guarded and slowly repaired, and made breaking them impossible to pin on anyone. The cables carry 99% of everything, and they are, at the same time, almost impossible to replace, and almost impossible to defend. Follow Macroframe, the hidden systems behind everyday life.